My relationship with the violin, my relationship particularly with the violin is as a singer, because I, in fact, studied. I was a singer. I was a choir boy. I was a singer all through my teens, and I went to music college as a singer. I was a violinist, of course, all this time. But somehow, that taught me was how to breathe, how to play a long line, how to enjoy a melody, how to use colour. Because as a singer, you learn all that. Of course, you don't have the paraphernalia of a violin and a bow and all the stuff. It's just the paraphernalia of your body, if you like, and your diaphragm and your lungs, and the way you breathe through the music. So that's principally, for me, the important thing about being a violinist is breathing as a singer would. I think every orchestra and every leader has their own sort of way of working, because there's no sort of school of leading, if you like. None of us have been to a specific college and learnt how to lead. It's something that evolves. In my case, I feel leading is obviously you have to be a good violinist, because you need to be able to inspire and to help your colleagues and to be able to make decisions very quickly about which way the bow is going to go, for instance, or whatever. But there's much more to that. There's the psychology of working with your orchestra, particularly the first violins, which is my section, because I am principal of that section as well. But then all the strings, it's sort of finding a way of bringing together the 60, 70 odd string players, 60 or 70 string players into a sound that works for the particular piece we're playing, and as importantly for the conductor who is there at the time, bringing him or her on board to that sound. And also, I suppose one of my principal jobs is the psychology, psychiatry if you like, of coping with a conductor's demands for the orchestra. I mean, a conductor might come along at 10 o'clock in the morning. He's never conducted this particular orchestra before, and the orchestra might never have played the piece of music that we are being conducted. So my role then becomes a sort of conduit to help the conductor get the best out of the orchestra, and help the orchestra get the best out of the conductor, because I'm the constant. And I mean, obviously I got to know Vasily very well because he's been our principal conductor for some years now, and he has evolved, if you like, because he started coming to us when he was very young and just starting out as a conductor, whereas I've already been leading orchestras for more than 25 years. So it was actually a great experience for me to have somebody who had such clear ideas of what he wanted. I mean, that's one of the great things about Vasily. He has such clear ideas of how he wants the music to go. Whether you agree with it or not, that's irrelevant. I mean, my job is to help him get that from the orchestra. And so I've sort of evolved this rapport with him, and also you sort of understand really what he's after. And when you're into the second or third Mahler symphony of the cycle, you've got a pretty good idea of how he's going to want to create the sound world that he wants. Although I must say there's still surprises around every corner with Vasily, which is nice because it keeps us all on our toes. I've played the Fourth Symphony many times, and I've thoroughly enjoyed doing it with Vasily, because I think he's brought a certain sort of pathos and a certain real long line of beauty to the slow movement, the beautiful third movement, which comes after the devilish violin solo movement. And he's managed to sort of convey a sort of magic, which I haven't experienced in that movement really before. And a sort of this wonderful sheen of beautiful, soft sounds. And he's not afraid, and I'm so glad he's not afraid, to ask the orchestra to play very, very softly. Because, I get a bit it up when conductors say, well, if you play as softly as that, nobody will hear you. You know, if everybody's very quiet in the concert hall, I mean, you do hear, you know, the proverbial pin drop. So, of course, you can play extremely softly and people will hear. The beauty of our hall here is that you hear everything. It's very clear. The rest of the movements, he's got a very distinct character between each movement. None of the movements is sort of intertwined. Well, I mean, they intertwine in the sense that they're part of the same symphony, but the character of each movement is so totally distinct with him. And with the fifth, you know, the fifth is the most often played Mahler symphony. It's the one everybody, you know, loves to come and hear. The fourth movement, the beautiful Adagietto. But there's so much more to it. I mean, there's this tragic sort of funeral march to start with, as it were, and then this sort of very jolly scherzo movement in the middle, you know, da da da, yeah, da 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 da, you know, sort of Viennese waltz, but not really, you know. And then you got this sort of rumpustuous last movement that just sort of seems to go on and on and on forever, but this energy going on. And as he said in the rehearsal, you know, we were taking it a little bit easy because it's a concert today and rehearsal this morning, and you know, he said, I want to keep this movement, this da 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 da, which goes almost right through the whole movement, and he wants to keep that energy right through. And of course, it happens in every single part of the orchestra. Somewhere has it practically the whole movement, and it does bring an extraordinary energy and excitement to it. We have what we call sectionals, where we might have, I might just take some time with perhaps first violins, or maybe with all the strings, to sort out, you know, one or two, because when you're sitting in an orchestra day in, day out, sometimes you sort of forget to listen a little bit, you know, just because it becomes a little bit routine. So sometimes if you just take everybody to one side for an hour and you let the wind and brass players have their long coffee break or anything, you can just sort of sit back and just, without anybody else there, you can just take a movement of a piece slightly more apart, you know, and put it back together again and explain why this has got to sound like that, and just sort of everybody can listen to themselves with more easily. I mean, when you're 60 or 70 string players sitting there, and you're sitting, you know, towards the back of a section or in the middle of a section, you know, the whole feeling of how what you're playing varies considerably depending on who's around you, whether there's wind playing going on at the same time, brass playing, or whatever. And so sometimes just to have a moment or a few, you know, a couple of hours just to sort of sit back and just really listen to what your colleagues are doing, your next door neighbour, you know, the cellos, if you're, say, a second violin or whatever, the first violins to the basses. I think it's very valuable to do things like that. If you look at a score of Mozart, I mean, you're lucky to get you know, an allegro at the beginning and you know, the odd forte or a piano. I mean, you know, almost nothing else. Whereas in every single bar of Mahler, it'll start off with a great sort of missive about how he wants this piece played. You know, Mahler. We forget that Mahler's symphonies have become, you know, some of the best-known classical music that you listen to. But in his lifetime, he had almost no success with his symphonies. It was very, very much later on that people really discovered them and realised what great things. So I think he was sort of, as a conductor, he perhaps felt insecure, as he does in his music making, but he felt insecure as a conductor. So he felt he had to write in absolutely all this material. With Mahler, I mean, he goes through every single key in every single piece that he writes. So you've got a minor key, a major key. You've got going from minor to major very quickly. He goes from one key to a key that you don't expect. So all this is emotion, and colour is partly to do with the emotional aspect of what you're doing with the music. And so if you look at a piece of music that's bumbling along in a sort of major, you're sort of imagining you know, a colour to you that is a happy colour. And then you might go to something quite sad, a sort of dreamier moment, and you would then you know, perhaps, I don't know, for the sake of argument, perhaps going to sort of brown, or, you know, if you're feeling really sort of dark and dingy, you get to a dark grey, you know. And so that's the one aspect of colour that you see with music. But creating the colour, creating it in sound as opposed to just key, that's something very that one learns with experience. The Mahler Fourth Symphony, of course, has this weird solo where you know you have to take another violin with you onto the platform, tuned in a different fashion from the normal violin tuning. It's tuned up one whole tone. So apart from being a bit nasty with the fiddle, it makes the fiddle sound sort of quite brittle, if you like, and it's I suppose Mahler's way of just trying to get a sort of more devilish attitude out of the leader. So yes, you are a soloist, but somehow you have to sort of integrate a little bit into the music as well. You can't just sort of, I mean, you're not standing up or anything, you're still sitting there as part of the orchestra, and you're sort of coming in and out of the atmosphere, as it were. And in fact, I have to go back and forth between each violin, I mean my normal violin with the normal tuning, and the one that's tuned slightly off, if you like.